A recent report reveals a blockbuster Penguins trade incoming. Kyle Dubas has both phones held up to his head, and Erik Karlsson would have to be a major part of that trade if it were to happen. Another Penguins player recently added to the rumor mill. The rumor mill has been red hot, and Penguins players that we don't necessarily want to trade are being mentioned for obvious reasons. We're going to tell you about why those players are going to be traded away and what other teams might see in them. But if you're curious about the thumbnail already, and that's why you clicked on this video, I will let you know right now we will be talking about JT Miller and a potential Penguins blockbuster later in the video, but you got to stick around if you want to hear about JT Miller. So this episode of Penguins Digest will be a trade episode. That has been what is hot lately, and that is what we are here to cover. 87% of you have not yet subscribed to Penguins Digest. I'm not sure what you're waiting for. If you want the latest Penguins news, rumors, updates, and analysis, Penguins Digest, we got you. So here we are, Penguins Digest. We have to talk about trades because Kyle Dubas has been blowing up social media for all hockey fans across the world. He said that he was going to have a fire sale. Now, that is not something that we Penguins fans want to hear, but he said it, and everybody's talking about it. So the first thing that we got to show you here today is what former Pittsburgh Penguin Ryan Whitney had to say about Kyle Dubas, and he thinks we should probably send this dude to the moon. And I'm not going to lie, I think that's a great idea. But, Ryan Whitney, let's think of something a little bit more plausible, a little bit more realistic here, because I don't think we're sending people to the moon quite yet. So let's talk about alternatives to sending Mr. Dubas to the moon, and I think that would include making some big trades. Obviously, whatever move Kyle Dubas makes is going to be under a huge microscope. If you look to the bottom of this article, it says Dubas is under immense pressure to make the right calls. The reason why he is because he's made all of the wrong calls up to this point. If you guys don't know how I feel about Kyle Dubas yet, you should go back and watch my video about Kyle Dubas a few videos ago where I put him on full blast. And he deserves to be on full blast for what he has done to this organization. And it almost seems like he's trying to ruin the Pittsburgh Penguins. But he has a chance to redeem himself. And we have a little bit more time before the trade deadline. So it's time for Kyle Dubas to make some noise. Could that be JT Miller? I'll tell you in a few minutes. First, we got to talk about who will be traded off of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Before we can get into who we want, we got to talk about who we have to give away first. So who will be traded? We've been talking about Marcus Pettersson for a long time. And Marcus Pettersson is almost a sure thing to be traded away. Where will he go? Well, we'll get into that. But first, we have to cover who else is on the trade block right now, because it's a name that we didn't expect to see. It's a name that just kind of came up in recent days and in recent reports from Penguins insiders, so it's worth talking about, worth mentioning. Who's stay, who's going, two names consistently appearing in reports. We know about Pettersson. We know that Kyle Dubas is going to be in charge of moving Marcus Pettersson, and we know that the Penguins will not be able to pass up these type of trades. But what we do now know that we didn't know before is that Drew O'Connor's name is coming up a lot. There is interest in O'Connor's size and speed, and a belief that his development is far from done. He can help a team immediately. He is a restricted free agent after this year, and the Penguins have the option to sign him, to keep him. But if they think they can get more in a trade than they would get based on him being a restricted free agent and getting, a draft pick in exchange for him signing elsewhere, they should make the trade. Drew O'Connor's a great player. He's been doing better lately than the rough start that he had to this season, and I can understand why a lot of teams would be interested in Drew O'Connor. He is a true asset, but also he's an asset to the Penguins. So if they decide to trade him, does that make a whole lot of sense? I mean, for Kyle Dubas, it makes a ton of sense. So now we just have to talk about the idea that Drew O'Connor could be leaving the Penguins. And I really didn't think that this could happen because I'm a big Drew O'Connor fan. I'm a big stever in this guy. Even when he was struggling, I thought that he was going to be one of the guys to help turn things around. And he has been really good lately. All those numbers came from recently. I mean, Drew O'Connor had a goal drought that lasted what felt like forever. And ever since then, he has been doing much better, which is starting to gain the attention of a lot of other teams thinking, hey, this guy can help us make the playoffs, win in the playoffs. I mean, he's a gritty player, good, bottom six type forward that can do a lot of stuff. Great two-way guy, can kill penalties for you. He can do a lot of things. He can even play center for you if you need him to. So he's a versatile player that a lot of teams should be interested in. Now we're just now hearing that he could be on the move. If Dubas hears that a player has any value at all, I would not put it past him to just start shipping guys away. And that is why Marcus Pettersson has been talked about this entire season, is because if the Penguins aren't going to be competing for a playoff spot, why keep a pending UFA on your roster that could help a literal Stanley Cup contender get better? So Drew O'Connor fits the mold of a player that a lot of teams desperately need. He's one of the few gritty players the Penguins have. So if we got rid of him, it would be very difficult to replace him. The only way I can think of doing that is calling up a guy like Rutger McGroarty, which I am also fine with. So if Drew O'Connor goes elsewhere, I would assume that McGroarty would be the replacement. And that's not a guarantee, but that would be my assumption because we can't just get rid of all our gritty players, right? So I do think if Drew O'Connor is moved, that opens the door for McGroarty to get called back up to the NHL and get another opportunity, which means I do see it as a legitimate possibility. Drew O'Connor is moved before the deadline in March. So that is something that was worth mentioning. Now we can talk about the fun stuff, guys. We're getting into the more hypothetical, but it's more fun to talk about who we might go get. Possible trade targets for the Penguins. Whitney literally just said, and that's why we showed you, Ryan Whitney said that Kyle Dubas making these moves, he's under a microscope. It's going to have massive implications if he makes the right or wrong decisions. So if he really wants to keep everybody happy in Pittsburgh, including the players, including Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, who he made promises to, he's going to have to buy, not sell. If he does sell, he's going to have to replace those players. So we can't just give up. We can't go into a full rebuild. It has to be a retool. And you've heard me say that in multiple instances in previous videos. It cannot be a rebuild until Crosby, Malkin, and Letang retire. Right now, we are still trying to win with this core of players before their careers are over. Their Hall of Fame careers are over. So let's show you a little bit of players that are on the trade block that we could go after. Now, first, I'm going to show you some guys that Kyle Dubas would really like. Some guys that fit the mold of what Kyle Dubas is going after. Young players, guys that haven't reached their full potential. Philip Kurashev from the Chicago Blackhawks, a perfect example. He's young. He's 25 years old. He's versatile. He can play winger. He can play center. He has not been productive for the Blackhawks. He has had some moments, but overall, he's been a disappointment. So they're willing to move him. He is on the trade block. He had 54 points riding shotgun with Connor Bedard last season, and he can't really crack the top lines of the lineup nowadays. I mean, it's kind of just a downfall for Philip Kurashev this early in your career to fall off a cliff like that. The Blackhawks are losing faith in this guy, so they'd be willing to move him, and it probably wouldn't take a whole lot to get him away because he's going to be looking for a qualifying offer from Chicago this summer. And if the Penguins think, hey, he could be a part of our future, bang, go get him. Why not? Why not? Tell me why not in the comments if you don't believe this. Next guy that I want to talk about, another young player that has lost favor with his team. He's only played in 18 games this year. Adam Boqvist, Florida Panthers. Now, this guy brings a lot of aspects, a lot of tools that Kyle Dubas could use to the table, especially if Erik Karlsson is traded away. He's a right shot defenseman, which we need, but he's also a really good offensive defenseman. He can play power play minutes for us. Matt Grzelcyk's been doing that a lot lately, but Boqvist could do that as well. And the Panthers, I think they value him a good bit, but not more than you think, because look at his contract. I mean, he's making, I think, $775,000. Yep, he's playing on a one-year contract, $775,000, and he could be moved from Florida, and Pittsburgh could be all over that. Like I say, right shot defenseman, brings a lot of offensive skill to the table. I think he would help us quite a bit. He's 24 years old. I mean, he's a young player, and he's still going to develop, still going to get better. He could be part of our future. And I think Grzelcyk would be a good fit for Florida. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the trade, but in my head, I'm thinking if we get Boqvist, they could use another defenseman, maybe Matt Grzelcyk, a more veteran guy. They're competing for a Stanley Cup, right? So that's $2 million more or less than $2 million more than Boqvist, and that's a proven hot commodity right there in Matt Grzelcyk. Now, I'm not saying we should trade Grzelcyk, but he's a free agent at the end of the year, so I do think he's one of the guys that's probably going to get traded. He's a great player. I love Grzelcyk. I'd like to keep him, but is it realistic? No. We could get a younger player. Grzelcyk's 31. Boquist is 24. So I'm just saying that is a possibility if Kyle Dubas was serious about going and getting younger players. Now I'm going to show you the guys that aren't as young, but are impact players. These guys could really help our team. And I'm talking about a depth scorer, a guy that, hey, even he could play on the first or second line. Malkin needs line mates. Malkin needs some scorers on his line. It's been kind of inconsistent who's played with Malkin this year. I think his best duo has been, either Cody Glass or Tomasino on one side and Michael Bunting on the other. But Jeff Skinner, man, he was signed by Edmonton to a one-year deal thinking, hey, we are going to make this guy play alongside, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and he's going to be a top of the lineup type of guy, a top six forward, scoring goals for us. He hasn't really lived up to the expectations. So Jeff Skinner could be looking for a new home here at the deadline. Could the Penguins, who I wanted to sign him in the first place, could they go get him now? Could they make a trade with Edmonton? He is an elite shooter, an elite scorer. We look back to his days in Carolina, he was one of the best scorers in the league. So this guy, he's still got a lot of skill. You put him on a line with a guy like, I'm not saying he's going to play with Crosby because Crosby is good line mates as it is, but you put him with other skilled players, and he is more than willing to, step up, take the shots, because the Penguins have a lot of passive players on this team, and Jeff Skinner's a shoot-first mentality type of guy. Now, that's not working alongside, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, but maybe a change of scenery could help Jeff Skinner. So, obviously, I'm being a little bit more hopeful with this one, and this last one, I think is a little more hopeful as well. Matt Dumba is the last one I'm going to go over, and then we're going to get into some blockbuster trade ideas, but Matt Dumba for the Dallas Stars. Now, he was great for the Minnesota Wild. This guy has a lot of tools that a lot of teams would value, but he just hasn't been a great fit in Dallas. He hasn't been playing that many minutes this season. He's only trusted to play about 15 minutes per game. He has just 2 points in 28 games, and he's missed some time with injuries. But the Stars, they need a better defenseman than Matt Dumba. Maybe Matt Dumba with a change of scenery. I think Dallas Stars defenseman. The Penguins have done this before, guys. They've gone after Dallas defensemen. Think back to Trevor Daley. They've done these type of trades with the Dallas Stars before. So I could see Matt Dumba as being a really popular option for Kyle Dubas. Now, he wants to get younger. Dumba doesn't make you younger, but oh my, is he a solid defenseman. And that's really what we need as well. You can't just focus on guys because of their age, because of their youth. You also have to focus on guys that are going to help you win now because, like I said, this is a retool, not a rebuild. So Matt Dumba could come in and he could be a shutdown defenseman for us. I like that idea. He struggled. His value's not that high right now. I'd go get him. I think that way about Jeff Skinner and Matt Dumba, and then Kurashev and Boquist, two young players that are struggling. Go get him. Go get him, Kyle Dubas. I'm telling you what it is, man. They're on the trade block for a reason. JT Miller, blockbuster incoming. It took us 12 minutes to get to this point, ladies and gentlemen, but if you're still with me, let's get crazy for a second and talk about JT Miller possibly coming to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, that has been a rumor for a long time. This is nothing new. But the new is that JT Miller is, again, not having a great time up there in Vancouver. They're looking to move him. The trade with the Rangers fell through. Could the Penguins be on the prowl here, make a big trade? Now, I will tell you before we even get into this that Erik Karlsson would most likely have to be part of this trade because of the salaries lining up there. But I do think if we traded Erik Karlsson to the Canucks, he would make their team better, and JT Miller would make the Penguins better. So, I think we could work something out here. I'll show you guys what I have drawn up. But first, we have to talk about the rumors that are circulating, the actual report that came out. And I will say, first and foremost, that this report is complete and utter garbage. I just want to tell you that first. I'm not saying the report is the reason why we're talking about this. The report doesn't even have half the names spelled wrong in it for all these players. I'm telling you, whoever wrote this has no idea what they're talking about. But they had to get some information from somewhere, which is why it sparked some curiosity, some creativity in my big Penguins brain. So I decided, you know what? Let's talk about it here on Penguins Digest because JT Miller would be a very interesting piece for the Penguins to go acquire. Again, this is not new as far as JT being linked to the Penguins. What's new is him being traded now at this given time because the Canucks are in a similar situation to the Penguins. They're on the outside looking in, and there's really only one wild card spot in the Western Conference for grabs. Whereas in the East, both wild card spots could be up for grabs because there's a lot of teams reeling right now. The Bruins aren't what they were supposed to be. The Rangers aren't what they were supposed to be. The Devils are reeling bad right now. I don't know how long that'll last, but the Penguins could step in. The Flyers are not a better team than them. The Columbus Blue Jackets are not a better team than them. Let's actually talk about JT Miller. I'm sorry, I went on another rant, guys. JT Miller would be an interesting piece for the Penguins. Up front, on the wing, doesn't matter. He's a very dangerous scorer, very dangerous playmaker. What would he bring to the Penguins? I mean, he would bring everything to the Penguins. I think this guy would be a perfect fit in Pittsburgh. I've thought that for a long time. There's a lot of teams that want him. But this article leads him to the Penguins. And again, that is nothing new. Trade deadline player rankings. This is from BetMGM. JT Miller's number 1. So if you're Kyle Dubas and you're thinking to yourself, how do I win back the Pittsburgh Penguins fan base? How do I prove that I am still trying to win now? Because that's what the Karlsson move was. The Karlsson move might not have worked out, but it was Kyle Dubas trying to prove to us, hey, we're chasing Lord Stanley. If you go get JT Miller, now that means I'm still here trying to win games. Now, you could still trade pieces like Marcus Pettersson. You can still trade Erik Karlsson. You could do what you got to do, buddy. But if you bring in JT Miller, I'm telling you right now, you're winning back over Penguins Nation right now. I'm just saying. JT Miller would be an ideal player, hometown kid. I really, really, really like JT, and I think he would fit the team extremely well, exceptionally well. And let's show you what I came up with here, what I drew up. And now this isn't an actual trade yet, but this is what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is if you want JT Miller, you're going to have to give up probably Erik Karlsson, and they definitely like Marcus Pettersson as well. Now the problem I have is how are the salaries going to line up? So I look at the Canucks. They have a lot of guys on the block, a lot of guys I want, really. Danton Heinen's an older player. He's not going to, Dubas isn't going to go for that. But a player he would go for is Niles Höglander. He's a younger player. I watched the Canucks last night. I noticed him. He was kind of hesitant most times. He turned the puck over a couple times. But, hey, he was trying. He was out there working. He was getting to the walls and making plays. And I think Mike Sullivan, man, he's had conversations with Rick Tocchet about Höglander, and that's the only reason they haven't pulled the trigger yet. But Kyle Dubas could flex his executive power here and say, you know what, this kid can play. He's got a lot of talent. A change of scenery could be really good for him. He's unhappy over there in Vancouver. So you bring in Höglander, he could be a real asset for the Penguins. Vincent Desharnais is a guy I put in videos for a while now, along with Höglander. He's a stay-at-home, big, hulking, rugged defenseman, and that is something the Penguins could benefit from. So he's not valued very much by the Canucks either. He's not signed to a long-term deal or nothing. And then JT Miller is the prize here. He's the hot commodity on the trade block right now, as you saw in the last graphic. Number 1 trade block piece right now out there for teams to go get. He would be a big, big upgrade for Pittsburgh. Up the middle, on the wing. I don't care where you put JT Miller. But what you got to do is you got to completely retool our defense in order to make this work. Because it's going to take Karlsson to make the money work. And it's probably going to take Marcus Pettersson as well as a pending, UFA at the end of the season. Now, I think Pettersson has been linked with the Canucks for about a month and a half now. So this is nothing new either. None of these rumors are new, guys. But what people don't understand is that there is some realistic, aspects to this type of trade. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you break it down and you see what the Canucks have that they don't want and what the Penguins have that Kyle Dubas doesn't want anymore, they could help each other quite a bit here. Now, to make the money work, the Penguins very well may have to eat some cap. But to make it work, you bring in JT Miller. He's got an $8 million cap hit. Karlsson's making 10. So even if you eat a couple million, you're still not paying any more. And I would argue JT Miller would help the Penguins more than Erik Karlsson has. And Erik Karlsson has been playing his best hockey as a Penguin. But I think the Canucks need defense more than they need anything else. They trade JT Miller away, they're going to expect at least 1 or 2 big-time defensemen in return. I also think the Penguins might have to add in a prospect here, but I didn't bother putting one in because that's ultimately going to be up to the Canucks who they value the most in the Penguins, development camp, whoever you want to talk about. That we have a lot of good prospects. Other teams, I think, really like our prospects. Now, Dubas isn't going to be, ready to just let go of all the prospects he's accumulated from some of these trades, like the Jake Gensel trade, for example. But I do think he'd be willing to part ways with some prospects he's not entirely in love with in order to get a trade done, especially bringing in a guy like JT Miller that can be such an impact player for the Penguins. There's so many teams after JT Miller. Penguins aren't even the favorites to get him. I don't even think they're within the top 3 or 4 teams to get JT Miller. But it's been mentioned. This has been a link between these two, JT Miller and the Pittsburgh Penguins, for so long now. I think it's due. It's due. Let's get JT Miller. What do I got to say, Kyle Dubas? What do I got to say, man? Go get JT Miller. Help us out, man. If we get JT Miller, we're a playoff team. I believe that in my heart, that if we get JT Miller, we're a playoff team. Dude's still in the prime of his career. He's in his early 30s. I mean, JT Miller would... He could be the captain when Crosby retires at this point if it's not going to be Brian Rust. I'm just saying, JT Miller, I just like his game all around. He's a great player, good leader. He does everything well, man. That's why everybody wants him. That's why he's the number one guy on the block. But I think he'd help the Penguins more than he'd help anybody else. I think we desperately could use JT Miller. I mean, seriously. I know we got a lot of other things wrong with our team, but JT Miller would be big. He'd be big. So, factor trivia of the day. I'm going to start doing this, guys, because this is interesting. It's a good way to end the episode. I know we just kind of rambled and ranted there for a little bit here on Penguins Digest today. So let's get back to reality here, back to some sanity, as we're going to look at the calendar here. It's January 22nd. It's a Wednesday. The fact of the day, beginning in 1974-75, Rick Kehoe, I actually don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'll be completely honest with you. This was well before my time, ladies and gentlemen. Rick Kehoe or Kehoe scored 27 or more goals for the Penguins in 9 consecutive seasons. In 9 consecutive seasons, this guy scored 27 or more goals. Rick Kehoe. So if you don't know who that is, which I actually have heard of him, but I can't remember how to pronounce the guy's name, he was a force. He was a force for the Penguins in the 70s. So that's the fact of the day. Tomorrow we'll have trivia, and we'll keep alternating every day because I got this interesting Penguins calendar, and it's got these facts and trivia on it. So I figure, hey, let's put this at the end of the video, every video, and just add something to the video that's actually factual, because a lot of times we're talking about rumors or analysis. This is history. Penguins history is important. We need to know this kind of stuff. Penguins Digest, you guys are diehard fans. And I appreciate you guys so much. You've been flooding the comment section. Flood the comment section of this video. If you're going to pick a video to comment on this video. I don't care if it's hate mail. I don't care if it's support. Give me something. Give me something. And also, give me 20 more subs. Let's get to 500, baby. Race to 500. Penguins Digest, thank you guys for watching. Click that sub button below, and let's keep this channel growing. You guys are the best. Penguins Nation, let's go Pens. And hopefully, we beat Anaheim tomorrow. We'll have another video released before that game, so I'll see you guys tomorrow here on Penguins Digest.